Trump, Epstein's lube for Ukraine, Canada, bend over. A storm brews on the horizon, thick with betrayal and manipulation. The chessboard of global power is shifting, and at the center of it stands a man whose every move drips with calculated ambition. President Trump's latest economic maneuver, a so-called America First tariff policy, has set the stage for an economic war that will shake the very foundations of once unbreakable alliances. And as Russia intensifies its onslaught on Ukraine, a grotesque theater of war unfolds, one that Western media wraps in comfortable, prepackaged narratives while the truth drowns beneath the weight of propaganda. The world watches, lulled into complacency by endless distractions, while those in power redraw the lines of global influence with a callous indifference to the people left suffering in their wake. The art of the deal, or the death of alliances. February 2025. Trump slams Canada and Mexico with a 25% tariff, all while China, America's so-called adversary, gets away with a mere 10% tax. A coincidence? Hardly. This is a game, and Trump is playing his hand. But what's the prize? A stronger America? No. The real winners sit in back rooms, toasting their success as the pillars of past alliances crumble under the weight of self-serving policies. They tell you this is about securing the border, about stopping the flow of fentanyl, about putting America first. But how does taxing your closest allies more than your declared rivals strengthen America? It doesn't. It isolates. It alienates. It weakens. And while Washington feeds you this illusion, the true architects of power move their pieces in silence, guiding America down a path of reckless isolationism. The consequences will not just be economic, they will be geopolitical, social, and deeply personal. When trust is eroded and cooperation is replaced with hostility, the very fabric of international relations begins to tear apart. As industries collapse and trade routes realign, ordinary citizens, workers, small business owners, entire communities, will be the ones who pay the price. Russia's relentless march, or a blood-soaked stalemate. While the world watches, Russia claims another victory in Ukraine. Headlines scream of territorial gains, but what they don't tell you is the cost: thousands of Russian soldiers fed into the meat grinder for inches of land. Pokrovsk, a name that's been tossed around for years, still stands. Yet, the media parrots the same tired script: Russian forces on the brink of major gains. The war machines churn, fueled by desperation, feeding young men into the abyss for the sake of political theater. Brink? What brink? They are pushing forward using mules. Yes, mules. Desperation seeps from their battle plans as they attempt to seize farmland, turning open fields into graveyards. Starved of proper logistics, Russian troops are literally dragging artillery shells and fuel with animals. The weight of war, once carried by tanks and supply chains, now rests on the backs of beasts of burden. It would be comical if it weren't so grotesque. And yet, they persist. But the real question isn't about Russia's advances, it's about how long the world will keep pretending that these battles are anything but Pyrrhic, that this war is anything but a grotesque exercise in futility, loss, and corruption. How many more lives must be thrown away before the world admits that no one wins in a war of attrition? Only history marks the graveyards where men were sent to die for illusions of conquest. And while the Russian war machine sputters along with outdated tactics and brute force, the world watches passively, clutching onto narratives that make this seem like anything but the senseless bloodbath that it is. It's a war waged on multiple fronts: the battlefields, the screens, and the minds of those who are fed a continuous diet of misinformation. What's the true price of a war no one is willing to end? How many more sacrifices must be made before someone dares to break the cycle? Blind loyalty, deafening silence. And then there's America, the so-called land of the free. A nation that once stood against tyranny, now led by a man who sees no shame in echoing the words of mass murderers. Trump praises Hitler, Stalin, dictators past and present, and his followers cheer. Do you think you will stop there? Do you think this man, this king of deception, has your best interests at heart? How do you think we see you now? You, the people who once fought for justice, now content to scroll, to nod, To let it all slip through your fingers while history repeats itself in high definition? Your silence is not neutrality, it is complicity. Your reluctance to challenge the lies being fed to you daily does not shield you from the consequences. When the dust settles and history looks back, it will not remember you as the defenders of democracy but as those who stood by and let it rot from within. The echoes of past warnings grow louder, but the silence of the people is deafening. Fear? Apathy? Or simply the illusion that someone else will fight this battle for you? The world doesn't wait for courage, it demands it. The moment you believe you can afford to remain silent is the moment you have already lost. Rise or submit, the choice is yours. This isn't a time for passive discontent. This isn't a time for whispers of frustration. This is a time for action. Protests should be shaking the ground, voices should be echoing through the streets in numbers never before seen. Get off your Fox-induced haze, get off the couch, and make your voice heard. Subscribe, stay informed, and more than anything, act. Write your representative. Make your sign. Take your anger and transform it into action. Because if you don't, history will not remember you as the generation that stood up, it will remember you as the ones who let it all slip away. The world is watching. Are you still waiting? Or are you ready to fight for the truth?